everyone, my name is Hannah Owen, and this is my presentation on the hemophilia community. To get a clear picture of hemophilia, you're going to need to understand what hemophilia is, the unique characteristics, and the people that it affects. Hemophilia is a rare disorder. To be considered a rare disorder, you're going to have to affect less than 200,000 people in the U.S. at one given time. Hemophilia is a bleeding disorder that blocks clotting factors, or you don't have the necessary clotting factors. It is not a disorder that makes your blood thinner or maybe makes it come out faster. It just prohibits you from clotting as fast as normal people. Hemophilia is broken into two categories: hemophilia A, which affects clotting factor 8, and hemophilia B, which affects clotting factor 9. You have 13 different clotting factors in the body at one time, but these are the two that are affected the most. However, you can still have hemophilia and have any of those number of 13 clotting factors affected. Next is our severity levels. It is very important. We have slight, moderate, and severe hemophilia. Slight hemophilia is where you have levels between 5 and 40% factors. Moderate is where you have between 1 and 5%, and severe is where you have less than 1%, practically none. However, these are very broad because you can be someone with slight hemophilia and still bleed like a severe. The unique characteristics of hemophilia are very important. The first is the hereditary influence it has on people. Hemophilia affects a X chromosome, so it affects mostly males. However, you cannot be a father and pass it down to a son because you only pass down your Y chromosome, but you can be a mom and pass it down to your daughter and your son because you have an affected X chromosome. However, you can also be a female and have 1 or 2 chromosomes affected, and you could be a bleeder or a carrier. So treatment for these are also unique because there are basically 2 routes you could go. You could go with plasma treatment, or you could go with engineered treatment, which is plasma treatment was commonly accepted in the past because it was kind of the only thing available. But people are leaning more towards engineered treatments because they reduce the risk of infection from other people, other blood types, but they're also risky themselves because there's things called inhibitors, which block the treatment from working in the body, and they are developed. So if you are taking a medicine and then you develop an inhibitor, it's really hard to find other options because they're so limited. There are 2 different kinds of care. It is episodic care, which is where you treat as you bleed, and there is prophylactic care, where you treat as preventative measures. Living with hemophilia can be scary, but there are a lot of different things that have happened in the past that have brought us a new age. So history for hemophilia in 1950s, there's fresh frozen plasma was the accepted method of treatment. It was risky in most ways because of the diseases that it could bring, but it was also inconvenient because you had to be hospitalized for it. In 1970, Drive Factor came out, which was exciting for people because it gave them the independence to infuse and treat at home. In 1973, the Hemophilia Act made it to where they had federally funded facilities for people to go to and get treated at that were specific to hemophilia. In the 1980s, hepatitis and HIV destroyed the community. It was very disappointing. There was about 10,000 estimated hemophiliacs at the time, and 5,000 got HIV or hepatitis, and then over 4,000 died from AIDS. In the 2000s, inhibitors were studied, and they've come up with ways to counteract them, so that's good for people who are working with limited treatments. And then one of the more recent things is gene therapy, which is super important and exciting, but they're still in the research phase with that. Misconceptions in the hemophilia community. People say, oh, well, they can't go play sports because they're gonna bleed to death. Well, that doesn't really make sense. It's not accurate, because if you treat your bleeds, you can do anything that anybody else can do. So a lot of people with hemophilia play sports and they have fun and they do all these things, and then cuts will kill. Nope, same thing. You're still just, if you treat it, you'll be fine. Patients with hemophilia always have a family history. That's not true. It can be developed. And then our last point is everyone with hemophilia eventually gets bad joints. Same thing. If you treat your joint bleeds, then you'll be fine. The community for hemophilia is very important. A lot of people think of it as a family thing. If one person gets infected with it, then the whole family's gonna learn how to treat it, because it's important, right? It's a whole family task. There are many different organizations willing to help and design for hemophilia. The NBDF, which is the National Bleeding Disorder Foundation, and the THBDF, which is the Tennessee Hemophilia Bleeding Disorder Foundation. Next is just a conclusion. All I want to say is that yes, it could be scary to live with hemophilia, but there are many ways to treat it and many exciting things these days and a lot of resources to help you. There are my Works Cited page. Thank you guys for listening.